We are here. It is happening. We are live. It is Monday. It is 1 p.m. here on the West Coast, and that means it's time for Geeks of the Roundtable here on Week in Geek TV. I am your host, Blake Morse, and below me is my lovely co-host for the day, Christina Telfson. And joining us for a very, very, very cool, exciting retro gaming discussion is the crew from the retro magazine that is currently being kickstarted. To my, I guess, what would that be, my right here, we have Bob Mackey, Mike Kennedy, and below them we have Brandon Justice and Scott Patterson. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us on.
No problem. All right, so why don't we really quick just go down the line and you guys introduce yourselves. Bob, since you're right next to me, we're gonna have you go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I mean, I've basically been gaming since forever, but in recent years I was an associate editor at One Up, where I took over the podcast Retronauts, and I just kickstarted that independently with Jeremy Parrish and Ray Barfold in spring, and we're currently producing episodes right now. So we had our own Kickstarter for that, and I'm part of the retro crew now.
Nice. Well, welcome. And Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, my name is Mike Kennedy, and I'm also I'm founder of GameGavel.com, which is a video gaming auction site that I launched back in 2008, and also publisher of Retro Magazine that we're talking about here today. And I've been a gamer my whole life. I mean, I'm 44 now, so I'm maybe I don't know where Scott comes in age-wise, but I grew up gaming in the 70s, so Pong machines and Ataris, and then I went the Sega Master System route, while half the but everybody else went the NES route, and just moved to Southern California, started hitting up all of these swap meets out here, and just collecting like a fiend, being that we just got such a convenient way of kind of finding all of these classics for next to nothing every weekend out here. So built up a nice big collection, and now just trying to kind of take the hobby and parlay it into a business.
Excellent. And Brandon, I think I know you the best out of all these people. We go back a little bit. We have some history.
That is true.
Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah, I freelanced for you while you were at EGM, and we are still buddies. We chit chat. We talk about our feelings on the phone and stuff. But why don't you tell the folks a little bit about you? Don't make me do it myself.
Yeah. In addition to evaluating Blake's cuddling skills for prospective mates, I also used to work as the executive editor over at EGM during its recent resurgence. Prior to that, I was in game development for 15 years. Worked for Sega, EA, 2K, etc. And then prior to that, I was an editor-chief over at IGN Dreamcast and helped launch the Xbox channel for them back in the formative years. And before that, I was at Game Fan magazine. So, yeah, when most of these games were originally debuting, I was writing about a lot of them. But like Mike, I too was a Master System fan because Phantasy Star is pretty much the greatest game ever. I like Phantasy Star 2 a little bit better, but that's just me. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, I've been gaming since the C64, Atari 2600, all the way through to today. And but my favorite game is still probably either Phantasy Star 2 or Tetris on the original Game Boy, not the Game Boy Color version because it makes me angry.
Nice. And last but not least, Scott, how you doing today?
I'm great, man. I go by Patrick Scott Patterson. My friends call me Scott or Original PSP, my gamer tag /handle /social media tag and everything else. I've been gaming for 32 years. I just turned 38 recently. You can do the math. That's for Mike there, who wanted to know if he was the oldest in the room or not. And basically today I make my living talking video games. So much so sometimes where I don't get to play them as much as I'd like to because I'm busy talking about them, whether it's at live events around the world or around the country so far, hopefully around the world, like San Diego Comic-Con and those types of events, as well as producing content online that tells the stories of the various people in gaming culture, from game designers to the players themselves and the history of it all. And, joined up with Retro Magazine to do more of the same and hopefully bring it out to a new audience.
Excellent. Well, welcome, guys. Thank you all once again for joining us today. And so, I guess let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter and what you're trying to do here for the people that are coming onto the chat and don't necessarily know what retro is.
Well, yeah, so as I said, I started an auction site for gaming back in '08, and for the last few years I've been thinking about introducing a content component to the commerce that we've already got. And so I've been trying to figure out, do we do that as online content? Do we, what form do we bring this content, into this network that I've started? And one of my writers had just asked me if I thought about doing a digital magazine before, and I thought, well, I really hadn't, so I thought, well, why not? Let's go the digital route. And so this was about maybe 2 weeks before the Kickstarter campaign started. I had a guy contact me who listens to one of my podcasts, Retro Gaming Roundup. He's been a big listener for the last 6 years, and basically just said, Mike, I've been listening to you for a long time, and I heard through the grapevine you were thinking about doing a digital magazine, and I'd like to do whatever I can do to help. And I happen to work for this big media company who does, for the last 12 years I've done print, digital, layouts for Time Magazine and Southern Living, and it's all these other huge magazines. And basically, his name's Mark Kaminsky. He's going to be on board as our creative director. And so he kind of came in and said, why don't we do a digital and a print magazine? So I thought, well, okay, well, I've got this guy on board. This is what he does. He's really, really good at it. He's really willing to work very inexpensively at the beginning here, which is sort of a key component. And he's got all the printing contacts and everything else. So we kind of started putting this model together, this plan together, and it just sort of, the planets aligned on that thing. And so it basically happened there. So now I needed the content. And so one of the other ideas that I had was going out and trying to find some of the best gaming journalists to bring on board this as contributors. And so I started kind of going through my list of contacts. A lot of these people I knew or knew a little bit. And then if the ones that I didn't know, obviously we kind of all connected. So, as you guys know, gaming, the whole industry is a pretty small thing, really.
Everyone pretty much knows everybody else for the most part.
Yeah. And so it just sort of, I just started making some phone calls and sending out a few emails, and then other people started hearing about this venture and wanted to be a part of it. And so the list of contributors just really grew. Originally, I think I had a plan for maybe 10 to 12 people, and now we're up to over 25. And then we got a long list of people that aren't, on that campaign page listed that are still interested in contributing. We've got journalists from Japan and from Europe and a bunch more in the U.S. here. We've got people, offering to do, editing for us. I mean, that's what they do in their real life, and they'll do that. We've got other design and layout people say we'd love to be a part of this as well. So the whole thing is just sort of burst, and grown a lot bigger than I thought, actually, since we started the Kickstarter campaign. But the main thing is we got basically 3 decades of journalists. So no matter when you grew up gaming, you're probably going to know some of these people.
Excellent.
I think that's going to be really cool.
Nice. So how did the rest of you guys get involved? Like, did Mike contact you, or did you hear about this on the internet?
Well, I know for my seat, one of the biggest things I miss, I've been with gaming the whole time, that whole 32-year span. I've always played the old stuff, new stuff, everywhere in between. And one of the things that I miss the most about the way gaming used to be were the gaming magazines. I remember waiting with excitement for the new Nintendo Power to come in the mail, or to go to the newsstand, whether it be at the bookstore or the grocery store or whatever, and see. God, at one point in time, it seemed like EGM got about this big every month. And to see that and to read that sort of thing, to hold it in my hands and look at that. And of course, because of the internet and that sort of thing over the years, that it's kind of not like it used to be anymore. And so when I saw that Mike, I've known Mike for years now, when I saw that he had this project going, and I saw the people that were involved with it, I asked him, if he had room, if I could jump on board with this. I wanted to be part of this, and he said, yeah, so here I am, and I'm excited. I think this is something video gaming has been needing, and clearly from the way the Kickstarter's been going, something that they want.
Nice. Excellent. All right, and Brandon, how about you? How did you get... you have a, like, coming from EGM, you kind of have that print experience and the retro experience as well, since that EGM is like a very iconic magazine.
You can just say that I'm old and
you're really, really old. And
no, I was in the NES Club groupie, and when I heard that, the star Scott, I'm just kidding, has a cameo in that. Looks really cool. Check it out. But actually, I got in touch with Mike. I should say that Mike reached out to me a little over a week ago and told me about the project, and I had heard about it, and obviously, the roster of folks that had been involved, and coming from a print background most recently, and having that magazine and just magazines in general in the print sector really struggle. I just thought it was really amazing, that somebody was trying to put out a quality print publication like the magazines I grew up reading. And not just because I love to read on the toilet, but that's a big key component for me. But beyond that, I really love the thrust of the magazine in terms of, covering classic gaming, because there's been a big resurgence in that in recent years. And I think if you look at a lot of the remakes you're seeing big companies do, I mean, whether we're talking about DuckTales or, reboots of classic franchises like Bionic Commando that have come through, or, just a lot of the remakes that folks are doing there. And not only that, I mean, you'll get a game like Shadow Complex and how it's that Metroidvania theme. There's a lot of games that are even building on those classic themes, and there's just there's a ton of momentum behind that, whether you're talking about, indie developers for tablets and phones, or folks that are putting out XBLA and PSN titles, or even a lot of the campaigns, our fellow campaigns on Kickstarter. I mean, Boogerman's coming back. The creator of Mega Man is bringing a, sort of a spiritual successor to that back, and there's just a ton of cool games out there, but there's not really an outlet for them. And when Mike kind of pitched the idea of, being able to do these cool retrospectives on franchises and shine some light on projects that are sort of throwbacks to the games we all grew up playing, it sounded really exciting. And, I knew a lot of the writers on the project. Several of them, actually, I worked with at EGM as well. I mean, guys like Sean Baby and Kat Bailey and Alexandra Hall. And I've known Andy Eddy for ages as well. It just seemed like a good roster of folks, and I think everybody here, this is a passion project. It's more for the love than anything else in the early going. I mean, we're all gamers first and foremost, and we just happen to bang on a keyboard until it forms out coherent sentences. But I'm definitely excited about that, and I think what Mark brings to the table creatively, I think we're going to have a really good book, and I was really happy to be involved.
Nice. And how about you, Bob? Like, I mean, obviously you've already got a huge focus on retro gaming, so
right.
Was it just like a natural thing for you to jump on board?
Actually, Mike and I had been talking about doing a project together for a while, and it only eventually transformed into the magazine. But I mean, coming from traditional, I guess, game coverage, I'm interested in this project because it's hard to talk about anything after it's released, let alone things that are 5 years old if you're writing for a traditional gaming website, because it's all focused on what's coming instead of what we've done or where we've been. So I like this as an opportunity to sort of focus what I'm doing with Retronauts, in like a textual form outside of the podcast.
He likes to read on the toilet too, is what he's saying.
I do, yeah. I don't like to bring electronics in there because that's all kinds of
how many
problems.
phones have we all dropped in the water? I mean, this has to stop.
So, all
I'd
right.
say 0, but close calls.
So
wish I could say the same.
Yeah. So all right. So obviously we've all been gamers for a while. I started gaming when I was very, very young in like 84 or 85. Some of you are a little older than me, not that much older than me.
Am I the baby of the group?
You probably are the youngest one. But I feel like for us, retro has this huge nostalgia factor, but for this younger generation, it intrigues me because games that pay these homages, that like do these 8-bit, 16-bit, and even sometimes even more minimalist graphics, like seem to be appealing to this younger audience as well. It doesn't like have that pull on the heartstrings and make you remember being a kid so much. What do you think it is about the retro genre that appeals to like this new generation of gamers?
Well, I think certainly everybody that grew up playing these games, you're going to have that constant pullback. I mean, they're timeless, right? These games that we grew up with are timeless, and I think that with the resurgence of retro that we're seeing now and all of the remakes that are coming out, it's just sort of reigniting some of those passions with people that maybe wouldn't have had that fire kind of lit again. And maybe some of the mobile gaming is dealing into that as well and influencing them as well. So I mean, it's just a huge market right now. And what we want to focus on is, and I just say the easiest way to say it is the past, present, and future of retro, because even with the new systems and all these different ways and new ways to play, there's going to be these retro games continue to come out. You look at all these great Kickstarter projects that are coming out that aren't reboots, but they're influenced by games that people grew up with. It's just a great thing, and there's not a magazine that really covers that, and that's what we want to talk about.
Nice.
Yeah, and another thing I'd add to that is what Mike had mentioned. There's a lot of cool projects coming out right now. Like you look at Hyper Light Drifter, or You're Not the Hero, or the Mighty Nine we mentioned before. These are games that are generating a ton of interest, and they're just amazing projects. And a few years ago, these games couldn't get made. Period. They didn't have the budget, and people were kind of doing them on their own. But now they have all these avenues, and I think we have a great opportunity to push those. But I mean, even beyond that, like you said, you've been gaming since '85. A lot of people who came in the '90s or the aughts that come into gaming and don't know anything about some of these classic games that really laid the foundation. And it's easier than ever now. I mean, we're giving away a Retron 5 as part of our promotional push here, which allows you to play up to 10 different consoles from the classic generations. I mean, from the Mega Drive and the Genesis, Super Nintendo, original NES. People have the opportunity to go out and play these games and check them out and really understand where we're coming from. And we have an opportunity to kind of put those out there.
It's almost like people that collect vinyl in a lot of ways, like that go to like stores and look for those records. Do you think that it's like gamers are becoming hipsters a little bit in that sense?
Well, he of the mustache says.
Hey, this is going away soon. This is just for a Halloween costume.
Well, I think a lot of it's kind of a parallel to what you saw with, let's say, television. You have entire generations. It didn't start out that way, but eventually you got entire generations that grew up never knowing a world that didn't have TV in it. And certain TV shows were just classics. They were popular then, and the same things that made them popular then made them timeless. And new generations ended up discovering things like I Love Lucy and old shows like that because of reruns and that sort of thing. Especially since those shows influenced all the shows that came on later. And I think with video games, you finally reached that same point now where we're several generations removed from those news stories coming out saying video games are the new fad or the exciting new thing. Video games are now something that's always been there. And you have entire generations that are now grown adults that never lived in a world that didn't have video games in it. They never lived in a world where video games were the new thing. So so as that's going on, more generations are coming up, growing up gaming. We have these platforms, and we have all these people of all these different ages that talk about, just like the TV shows and the movies people did in the past, and the songs, like you said, vinyl, talking about those video games that they played growing up, and they're turning their kids onto them, and they're turning their kids' onto them, and the same things that made those games popular when they were new still works now. Those same game mechanics hold true because modern games still borrow very heavily from a lot of that. It all influenced it all. Now, the first generations of gamers, now they're the ones making today's games. And you can see that. Yeah. So it all ties in together.
Yeah. Honestly, one of the things that always appeals to me about retro gaming, and maybe you guys will agree or have a different take on it, is there seems to be a lot more creativity and challenge put into a lot of this stuff. Like, people didn't have the graphical capabilities they had at the time, so they had to find other ways to kind of show these concepts in a way that was intriguing and then challenging enough to keep you going. Because it wasn't like games now are they rely heavily on a narrative, and that was something that was really different for me growing up. And the thing that appeals to me about older games and games that have that throwback is there's more of that challenge factor, or even getting the highest score in the new Pac-Man Championship Edition or something like that.
I think also there used to be room for more ideas outside of the 3 ideas you're allowed to have now with games. Either it's a war game, it's a zombie game, or it's both. And what if I want to play a panda that does karaoke? There's no game like that now, but there was for the PlayStation in the late '90s. So I mean,
he's got a valid point with that now. Nowadays, it's become such big business, at least with the AAA studios, that you got the guys in the suits that they're not willing to take the same risks. You see the same thing in movies too. You know, you're not willing to take the risk. I mean, I think some of the best stuff from back in it came out when, let's say, Bally Midway. Bally Midway was making a ton of money off the gravy train of having the Pac-Man license. They just left their game programmers and designers alone, and they came up with some fantastic concepts that you wouldn't see that nowadays. They came out with things like Spy Hunter and Tapper because they didn't have anyone breathing down their neck saying, we want a game that does A, B, and C because we want to market it to this or whatever. They let them alone. You don't see that like you used to because now they're not willing to take such a huge financial risk.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing working in the games industry, the one thing that almost everyone who's worked on the development side for any amount of time has come to the conclusion of is that, ultimately there are a lot of great ideas, a lot of passionate, talented people out there, and the ability, as Scott mentioned, to just do what they think is right is becoming less and less prevalent. And I think that's one of the reasons these indie projects appeal to people, because, at the end of the day, these people believe that there's somebody out there, there's a large enough audience that wants to play these types of games. They're still there. And I think the success of the Kickstarter that Mike's been able to put together and just the roster of people that we've had come on is a testament to that fact that, there's definitely people out there who enjoy these types of games, who want coverage on these games. And I think if you look at the way some of these Kickstarters have exploded, I mean, if you look at what the Double Fine folks have been able to do, and people said adventure games were dead. If you look at what Brian Fargo's crew at In Exile has been able to do, and old school top-down RPGs, CRPGs are dead. It's like, well, apparently not. I think the thing is, publishers, like the movie industry, they're banking on 3 or 4 games to pretty much bankroll everything they do in a year.
Yeah.
And, again, I think if you look at the Mighty Nine, that's such a hilarious example to me. Everybody's like, give us a new Mega Man, give us a new Mega Man, and Capcom's like, no, there's like 5 people want to play it. Well, actually, people put $4 million into a game that they said would cost them about $800,000 to make, so...
Yeah, there you
go.
go.
Rethink that one.
That's a prime example. But then the flip side of that is I've had there's been a lot of Kickstarters that I would have thought would have done great that totally failed, like the Mutant Football League, for example.
Yeah.
That did not make its goal, which broke my heart because God, have I been wanting a new Mutant League football since the last Mutant League game. And
dude, I pitched that game 3 separate times when I worked down at Tiburon on Madden, and they just like, there's not any interest in it, and I'm really heartbroken that it didn't succeed.
Yeah, that. But then at the other time, I honestly was not surprised when James Pond did not make its goal.
Didn't make it.
Yeah. I don't think anybody was kind of shocked. And now you have the Boogerman Kickstarter, which is... Look, I was never really a big fan of Boogerman, but I feel...
I don't know if there are any Boogerman fans. But
that is not true. It's going to be awesome.
Okay.
Shut up.
If it makes its goal. I mean, last time I checked, it wasn't doing that great. But then they bring in Earthworm Jim. They bring in Earthworm Jim, and I feel like they're just kind of trying to coerce me into liking that game by saying, hey, look, if you've got a friend to play with you, you can be the second player and be Earthworm Jim. Which is a game that I would much rather see get funded.
Blake, you must be really torn because you love Earthworm Jim, but you have no gaming friends. I
know. It's the mustache scares them away.
Pretty intimidating.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I don't know. I look like this thing makes me feel like I should be in a barbershop quartet or serving people like root beer.
You look like Harry Mudd from the old Star Trek series. Kind of what it reminds. I've been trying to place it this whole time, actually.
Nice. I've been getting a lot. I got Mr. Belvedere already, which cracked me up.
Mr. Belvedere?
Yeah, somebody said Mr.
Belvedere. Song just popped in my head.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Same.
I got Cliff Clavin. If I had a mailman suit, I could be a pretty mean Cliff Clavin. At any rate, but that's retro in itself. But speaking of retro, like, what defines retro to you guys? Is it just like, this game is a decade old, now it's old school and it's considered retro? Is there something that gives a game that status, or is it just a number?
Gosh, I don't know. We've had that debate on Retro Gaming Roundup. Many, many times. It was one of our first podcasts, and I don't think there's 3 of us that host that, and I don't think any of us agreed on it. Some people I've heard say they'll cut it off at the cartridge. Anything that has a cartridge on it would be retro, which I don't think is necessarily true. I mean, I think the Dreamcast and the Saturn, I mean, I think are certainly retro, right? And the PlayStation, I even throw into that. But somewhere for me, I mean, the cutoff somewhere right around maybe after the PlayStation. But I don't know if you guys consider the PlayStation retro or not.
I consider the PlayStation retro. I consider some things on the PlayStation 2 retro. But like I kind of have my old school definition and my retro definition. If that makes any sense. Like something that's like past a certain point where I played it like maybe like 8 years ago, I'll consider that like more retro. That's like the last generation of games. Old school is the stuff I grew up on that like people that are half my age would stare at me blankly if I mentioned it to them.
Scott, the guy I do our podcast with, he said if it's a system that he bought his kids, then it's not retro.
Well, what I find, I mean, obviously mileage is going to vary on that sort of thing. I mean, obviously what some of us consider retro is going to be based on age. This is the same with anybody. I mean, I know people that will argue up and down that retro games, cut off at like 85 or 87, but you go telling that to somebody from the Street Fighter generation or the Mortal Kombat, NFL Blitz, NBA Jam generation, that sort of thing, and they're going to argue the point with you. To me, I try to define it, and this still, of course, can't nail it down specifically, but I try to define it more as an era of games or a game title that provides an experience that you can't get in modern products. Or at least major modern products. I mean, the stuff that was marquee titles at one point in time. Now you might find them in indie games, or you might find them in Xbox Live Arcade games, that sort of thing. But you don't find them in Call of Duty or Battlefield or Grand Theft Auto. So that to me, I know that's still loose, but that's kind of how I try to look at that. When there's a game mechanic or game experience that is not. It's something that doesn't carry on anymore. It kind of becomes a throwback, so therefore it kind of becomes a retro game.
Nice. There does seem to be sort of a general consensus, at least for making something in the style of retro, and that it has to have graphics that are no better than 16-bit, and it has to emulate. Like some sort of classical style of gameplay. I mean, even Fez at its heart is still a very rudimentary platformer puzzle solver.
Well, and the thing is, though, I don't think we have to limit the definition by visuals. I mean, like, take a look at the last couple Rayman games, or, again, Shadow Complex is a great example. Those games have, like, incredible visuals. And, I think that people appreciate the fact that we can have the old school gameplay with new school visuals that weren't even possible. I mean, I remember seeing the parallax scrolling in Castle of Illusion and going, "Oh my God, this is the future!" And it's like, now you look at these games and what they're able to do with them. To me, retro is anything, and I don't care if it's 20 years old or came out 2 days ago. If it has that foundational, pure gameplay and a focus on that above anything else, that those games are foundational. They, even if Call of Duty doesn't exactly have this set formula that we saw in the 8-bit days, there are certain things about games that still hang around, just in terms of the secret sauce that kind of makes them go. And if games are really built around that idea, and if they really pay homage to where we came from, those new games are retro to me too. But beyond that, it's easy to look back at the Super Nintendo or the Vectrex and be like, that's old school, because it is.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah, well, one thing I love about classical gaming myself is the music, and I mean we do 2 monthly chiptune shows here on Week in Geek, just dedicated to the modern culture of these people that like take Game Boys and Nintendos and Ataris, and they use them to make music. Like if you look at our culture, like gaming is completely expanding beyond just gaming, and that's like a prime example and something that I personally love. Which is kind of out of left field, but I'm just curious, is this something that you guys are going to be covering in the Retro magazine? Like, you guys have been talking about gaming, but I think there's like a whole subset of culture that's now not, like, it's gamers outside of gaming.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this culture that we've grown up with, I think, is going to be key to this magazine because it's still such a great culture, and it's a culture that is in fear of being, taken out from underneath us. I think the more we get shoveled down our throats that everything's going to be digital and download and intangible, that I think a lot of people are going to gravitate back to these physical experiences that they can have with these cartridges and stuff. That sounded really interesting, didn't it?
Big Brother's going to take away our games.
Yeah, right. This is, I think for like today's younger gamers or gamers that are going to, kind of come into their gaming prime in the next, 7 or 8 years. Look at all of us that have these huge collections that fill rooms or floors of houses sometimes, how great that is. And, that could be disappearing, for this generation of gamers, which I think is really sad. Hopefully not, hopefully it isn't, that's not the way it's going to go. But I think there's just a tremendous culture that we've all grown up around. The ability to buy and sell your games, trade your games with your friends, take games over to your friend's house and play them, play games on the original consoles, that you grew up playing them on, all of those types of things. So I think we'll certainly have some culture pieces in here.
I can't ever imagine getting rid of my Super Nintendo or my NES. I just can't. And I still occasionally play it. And my goal is to have arcade cabinets eventually in my house, and it's something that I always want because it reminds me of my childhood and it's fun, and they were amazing.
Oh man, I just had to get rid of 2 arcade cabinets, and it killed me because that was like totally a life goal for me. But with that in mind, the whole idea of collecting games and archiving them, do you guys ever feel kind of like a historian? Because I know when I buy used games, I buy them based off of not only like their personal importance to me, but like how I feel they made an impact on the gaming world. Like I feel they're important to be able to reference a lot of times. Do you guys ever get that vibe, or do you just do it completely for the love of gaming?
I do it for both personally, and I don't just stop at trying to collect games and consoles and that sort of thing. I'll try to collect anything I can get my hands on, whether it's an old magazine, old books, old promotional items, posters, all that sort of thing. Because to me, it's not just history. It's not just video game history either. It's pop culture history. I mean, take a look back at what happened throughout the crash period and back when video games were just kind of considered a fad, throwaway type of thing. The majority of this stuff already ended up in a landfill a long time ago. This stuff got destroyed. Arcade cabinets, the majority of the old arcade cabinets are long since destroyed, converted. They're still getting destroyed and converted now. Yep. You see people taking retro cartridges now and taking them apart, building them into other things and stuff. And they only made so many of these things. I mean, it's like a natural resource. You use so much of it, it's not coming back. So to me, it's vital. And I mean, I don't see enough people, in my opinion, preserving the history of this thing that I've loved my whole life almost enough. So I take it upon myself to try to grab on and hold on to as much of that as I can, not just for myself, but for my kids, for future generations to go. Because once some of this stuff is gone, it's not coming back.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. You look at the film industry. The first 40 years of film, there's very little that remains. I mean, they were treated, they were tossed in the trash, they weren't preserved well. Somebody changed that somewhere. Same thing with sports. Somebody had to be the first person to say, this bat, they hit this important home run, this bat is important. We need to hold on to this. We need to preserve this for future generations, for the history of our sport. And the same thing with video gaming. So to me, it's very much about not just my own personal memories and nostalgia, but yeah, definitely trying to hold on and make sure this stuff has a future.
Yeah, I don't want to live in a world without Miss Pac-Man. Like that's all I'm saying. Miss Pac-Man is I don't know what it is. To this day, Miss Pac-Man is still my favorite game, and when everybody finds out what I do for a living, that's like their first question is like, "Oh, what's the best game ever?" And I tell them hands down Miss Pac-Man. Like if I see a machine, I have to play it. I have to push myself to get that high score and be better than some stranger who got the high score before me. I feel compelled. And
there's just something about that original cabinet that isn't duplicate. You can't duplicate it on anything else. Even another type of like modern day version of the same game in an arcade cabinet, it just doesn't feel the same.
It doesn't. No,
Yeah,
my ultimate goal, one of my like personal life goals, is to have a Miss Pac-Man cocktail cabinet. Like, you know, like it means that it sounds and that's gonna be odd to some people, but like, you know, it's something that it means a lot to me personally. Like growing up with that, and I think that's kind of, you know, what you guys are going for here with this magazine. In a lot of ways, is just playing off of that passion that people like me have for such things.
Well, and more than that, I'd love to echo Scott's point from earlier. You know, we're just getting to that place in the industry where we're starting to, you know, have this preservationist movement. And I think for a lot of us who grew up playing these games, you know, it's not about, you know, kind of riding the coattails of that movement. It's about actually making that movement happen.
Yes.
And I mean, for me, it's like, you know, my game collection is kind of obnoxious. I mean, I spend, you know, a couple grand keeping this stuff in storage every year, but it's like at the end of the day, you want to be able to go back to those games, and there's just a whole generation of gamers. I mean, I love when I talk old school with people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the original Tomb Raider was really awesome," and I'm like,
wow, yeah, it trips you out. Like when like when I was the editor, I had some younger writers, and they would like, I'd ask them like, well, you know, what's like your first gaming memory, and they would always bring up the N64, and then I would feel old as hell.
My first gaming experience was the Atari, and I played. Oh, I always heard it's one with the tanks and the airplanes in it. There's two separate games with me. Yeah, I used to play Combat all the time, and everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
Well,
how do you live?
I think about load times. Every time somebody, the new GTA load time is intolerable. I think back to Commodore 64. I played Frogger on a cassette tape.
Oh my
on
God,
a cassette tape, on a tape drive. It took 32 minutes for that to load. To play Frogger. And about 1/10 of the time it'd crash at boot up. And I had to start all over again.
That's like the gamer equivalent of having to walk 14 miles in the snow.
It is. So it's like, it's like, don't give me your load time crap, okay? Because, you know, seriously, I used to do that, and I didn't mind. I liked to play it. It was worth it in the end to me, you know. So that makes me. Yeah, exactly. You know, throw my cane at their PS4. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So obviously Mike stepped out for a second here, but I'm curious. Do you guys have a favorite retro title? Like what's like the one crown jewel for you as a gamer? Bob, why don't we start with you, since you've been...
I would have to say, I don't actually, I didn't contribute anything to the collection conversation because I didn't want to be a buzzkill. I don't actually collect anything. I live in the Bay Area, and I'm a writer, so I'm poor and have no space. But I do keep a few trinkets around. And one of them is my original Earthbound box and cart, which I got release date in '95. So that's like the thing that I treasure. One of my favorite games. And
keep that around in case he's ever unemployed. He can live off that.
Yeah. I'm going to be cashing that in at the pawn shop within a few months. But until then, it's my favorite, keepsake. One of my favorite games of all time, and one of the more popular and rare SNES games.
Yeah, very true. Bob, where in the Bay Area are you, man?
I'm living in Berkeley.
Berkeley? Oh, okay. I grew up in the East Bay. I'm in San Francisco myself. Oh my God.
We can
Ohio.
totally hang and talk about our hair. I'm really lonely. I have no friends. No. But yeah, what about you, Brandon? What's your favorite old school game?
Oh wait, Mike's coming back.
Oh,
sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
That's quite all right.
No worries.
You know, I have a host of games that I really love, and I wouldn't like pick a favorite out of any of them. But my top 5 in no particular order is probably Tetris on the Game Boy, Phantasy Star 2, the original Wipeout, Mutant League Football, and Speedball 2 Groove Deluxe. Those are games that were just the ones I wore out more than anything else when I was a kid.
Nice. All right, Scott. What? I know you got a Pac-Man arcade cabinet in the background there. So I mean, I could take a shot in the dark and guess it was Pac-Man, but I could be.
Well, I always have a soft spot in my heart for Pac-Man. Pac-Man was the first video game I ever played, and I'll always come back to things like that in Galaga, stuff like that. But to me, I think the games that most embody, I guess, you know, the most pure aspect of everything are NES era games, particularly stuff like The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Brothers 3, and that sort of stuff, because they still clearly had their ties to the original games that were part of that first big boom period, but they also were the ones that introduced elements that forever changed gaming and moved gaming forward into what you see now, not just from Nintendo, which still uses those same exact concepts over and over and over again, but everything else that influenced things. So I mean, to me, those are the ones that kind of bridge a very big generational gap, and they're still fun to play for anybody of any age or generation now, and I think that's important too.
Nice. All right, and Mike, for you, we were just talking about like what
My
are
5 favorite games?
well, you know, your favorite. Let's hear your top 5.
Oh gosh, well I have to go with my favorite game of all time, which is pretty old, and that's Kaboom on the Atari 2600. That was the first game that I bought for that system, and I absolutely can't get enough of Kaboom, man. Second, Game Boy and the GBA. I mean, my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, God, there's so many hours playing that game. It was just such an awesome game on a new system at that time. It was a great pack-in. I mean, Nintendo just killed it with that. Donkey Kong Country maybe is one for me that might sound weird, but I mean those like pre-rendered 3D graphics, the Silicon graphics just blew me away so much. And that game made me buy a Super NES. I think there was a pack-in that they did with it, and just absolutely loved that. Pac-Man, like Scott, I mean that was the first kind of arcade game that I kind of mastered. I can still get to the 9th key on that with the patterns and whatnot. And Star Castle, another early arcade game that was again one of the first ones that I kind of figured out how to do real well on that on my own without kind of getting any hints from anybody else. God, I don't know. There's bazillions of others.
There's obviously so many. There's just there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of games out there at this point.
That's what's. I mean, again, isn't that great? I mean, for anybody that wants to play like an old game, I mean, I've got more games in my garage than I'll ever play in my life. Which is we finished it off, and it's kind of the home office and stuff. And I've got down here, I've got a Commodore 64 hooked up in the back, an Apple IIc over here, a Midway Touchmaster over here with a bunch of Bali prototypes in it. I got a big screen with like 8 or 9 systems hooked up to it. I mean, and I got a Missile Command Cocktail over here and a main cabinet and a Super Moon Cresta and boxes of other consoles and stuff up here too. So I mean, it's a lot of fun. I don't get much work done.
Rob Mike's house. Like,
yeah. Orange County, you say that narrows it down.
You're close to me.
Yes, let's see.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, Christina, you were talking about getting arcade games. I mean, arcade games are so cheap out here. Everybody else in the country they can't believe. I got friends that live, back east, and I just picked up a Cocktail Missile Command for $140.
Are you kidding me?
It looks brand new. It was on Craigslist. It was on Craigslist for a couple of weeks. It sat there and nobody bought it. And finally, and the guy's got a really nice Cocktail Dig Dug that looks brand new for I think he was asking $525 for it. I don't think he's going to get that, but generally out here, I mean, you could find arcade games for $100 to $300.
Because where I was from in Fresno, when I was looking to play around to see how much it was in the thousands.
Which one was it?
I know that one I found was a Pac-Man, and the other one I can't remember. I think it was it's the giant game. It's pole something.
Pole position?
Pole position?
Thank you. Yes, I always forget that one was called. And they were up in the thousands.
Yeah. How long ago was
those
that?
are older.
Last year.
Harder to
find.
find.
I guarantee they didn't sell for that. I don't think they sold for that though. If you just keep looking like on Craigslist like every day, you'll find a decent arcade game for $200 to $300.
Yeah. My dream is to have a room just filled with my favorite arcade cabinets.
It seems like arcade cabinets are like the one thing that people are always hunting down, and seem like they'd be the things that have the most danger of really disappearing, because arcades themselves barely exist anymore, and people. Like I know a few people that work on pinball machines and arcade cabinets, but like the general populace doesn't really know or care, which is totally unfortunate.
Arcade games are kind of making a resurgence though with all of the arcades. I mean, they're literally popping up all over the place right now. So, there's arcades in Nebraska and Colorado, and of course Insert Coins in Vegas is kind of a popular one. I want
to open one here in the city. Like I think it would kill. Honestly.
Well, one thing to keep in mind with arcade cabinets too is number produced. I mean, when you're talking, even the biggest arcade hits, Pac-Man, they sold 100,000 Pac-Man machines in the U.S. Miss Pac-Man was the only one that sold more than that. But the average arcade game, even the big hit games back in the day, sold 20,000 or less. And so you figure if there was a game cartridge that sold 20,000 copies, it'd be considered rare. Now think about a gigantic hit game selling 20,000 copies, arcade games selling 20,000 copies. Then you figure in the crash, and you figure in the conversion kits, and you figure in the operators that parted them out to fix other games and threw them in the dumpster for the tax write-off because they never made any money. You figure out the people nowadays who don't have a clue or a passion for the history. They'll take a complete arcade cabinet and gut it and turn it into one of those bootleg multicades or a MAME cabinet. And that's the thing with these arcade cabinets, is that they've always been destroyed, and yet I think they embody video gaming in a way that even old consoles don't necessarily do it, but especially the old ones, because like you see Super Pac-Man back there, it's not just a plain box like you get now with a marquee and a screen. I mean, they had specific art drawn for it. The art covers the cabinet all over the place. It's just something about it. It's like classic cars. Classic cars get rode into the ground and put away, taken out to the scrap heap. There's some of those are extremely rare, and these arcade games they're continuing to get more and more rare. So they are kind of a holy grail type of thing.
And even paying quarters to play games. So there's a small underground pinball and arcade place near where I live. And I went there the other day. I popped a quarter into Street Fighter 2, and I beat Street Fighter 2 with one quarter. I posted about it on my Twitter or whatever, and it had more likes than anything I'd posted in a month. And I felt so freaking good. That was a video game milestone for me. I never thought in my life I would have the skill ability or another chance to beat Street Fighter 2 like that, especially with one freaking quarter, man.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, my balls felt huge afterwards.
Well, back then there wasn't an internet either. I mean, once upon a time we didn't have a big thick book that came out before launch, and we didn't have walkthroughs. And yeah, we had a quarter, 50 cents. You had to make that stuff last, man. They didn't give you on-screen walkthroughs either. Do this and press A if you understand. No, back then, you stick that quarter in, and you're gonna have to figure it out, buddy. Yep. So there's this, it was, you felt like an accomplishment. I remember Soul Edge during the fighting game era. Soul Edge, that was one that you have to run a big gauntlet, just to get to this last guy. It's just brutal, and then beating that on a single credit, that's a lot more satisfying than beating a lot of these modern day games that have save points and walkthroughs even when you don't want them.
Yeah, definitely. Man, let's see, Christina, you are my co-host, and I've kind of been hogging everything here. Did you have any questions for these guys before we get going?
I think you actually covered everything that I had thought to ask them.
Really? I'm just that pro. Man, so let's look. So the Kickstarter has a few more days left to go. It looks like you guys are gonna meet your goal. What are some of your plans for stretch goals? If you reach your funding and beyond that in the next few days.
I'm buying a pony.
Yeah.
Good plan.
Mainly just adding more content. That's really the main thing. I mean, we're saying originally, right off the bat, we're going to guarantee a minimum of 52 pages with 4 pages of ads. But,
awesome.
I think there's probably a relatively good chance that maybe the premier issue might be even, pushing 60 pages at this point, either way. Just because, we've got such a great contributor, cast of contributors right now. We definitely want to try to get everybody in kind of this first issue and then kind of see how it pans out, I think, as we move forward. But it's just mainly, adding more content, and we want to, pay everybody, and that's kind of where that 50K is all going. A lot of people want to know, some people think that sounds like a lot of money to them, and some it's not enough, so. But I think I get more questions like, 50K. God, what are you doing with that? I'm like, well, we're paying the writers, and we have a budget of around, at one point it was around $6 to $7 grand per issue for them. So if you do the math times 7 issues or 6 issues, that's about 40 grand.
Yeah.
And of course we got to print it, and ship it and everything else. So that really is kind of a break-even point. So we really hope that we get a lot of good support and we can get up over that. and it just allow us to do more.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, really, people don't get that game journalists, especially, like, I freelance as a game journalist, and we don't get as much money as we deserve more often than not, just to be polite about it. So, I mean, I think that it's that's a more than reasonable budget, honestly, especially for the amount of content you guys are looking to create per issue, and you're looking to do every other month, it sounds like. Or
it's going to be 6 issues at least for the first year. And with Brandon on board, I mean, I think we're going to probably relatively quickly ramp up the online content as well. We want to have kind of both. And part of what we want to do is, of course, everybody that gets a print subscription will also get the digital free. And we're going to make sure that that's formatted for everything under the sun, of course. And the digital the digital version of it, we'd like to do some pretty neat things with that. I mean, obviously, gameplay trailers, or just launch trailers, that type of thing, video reviews, playthrough videos. We also want to put maybe some shopping carts in there, and it's not going to be like the Game Gavel magazine, but it would only make sense to tie the content that we've got in the digital back to the auction site, so people not only have the opportunity to maybe read and be entertained by what we have in the book, but they can also maybe go in and buy and sell the games that they're reading about in a place that doesn't charge them to death in fees like eBay and Amazon. So, that's really kind of the plan, is to kind of integrate the two, conveniently and intelligently. So we kind of become this all-inclusive, unique gaming destination that doesn't exist out there anymore, where you can get all the information you want, have a lot of fun, and also maybe buy and sell some of the games as well.
Excellent. I'm not opposed to that. I've been trying to find a copy of Jumping Flash for quite some time. So
I have one, Blake. How bad do you want it?
Bad enough to cut you up good if you don't give it to me.
I know we can get a copy of Earthbound.
Oh, really?
Oh, shit.
For cheap.
I wouldn't even have to fly there.
Bob, is that your original copy of that, or did you lay down some major greenbacks for that just recently?
It's the original from '95 when I was like 13 or so, and yeah.
I just wanted to bring this up too, since he's flashing his wares. Boy, bam.
All right.
I bet like 90% of our audience doesn't even know what the heck that cartridge is for. So yeah.
Let's see. All right. Well, I'm just reaching for some random stuff that's within arm's distance. I don't think any of y'all have a copy of Pit Fighter for the Super Nintendo with the box.
That's because we like good games.
Oh, well, if you like good games, what about Out of This World?
I have that.
Oh,
my God.
Let's see. NBA Jam, of course, another classic. Donkey Kong Country that Mike mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Totally in there. And I mean, I got a bunch of NES. I got like Chippendales, Rescue Rangers, Battletoads. Gradius 3. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, Gradius.
There we go.
Have any of you guys ever heard of the game Wanderers from Wise?
Yes.
That was probably my favorite game.
Yeah, I have the PSP.
When I was in junior high.
I have the PSP collection for that.
So good.
Yeah, which is another thing. Like, it's always cool when they come out with those retro collections, but like, kind of like Scott was talking about earlier with the arcade cabinets, it still doesn't have a Pet Rock. Is that a box of Pet Rocks, or
Dude,
just one
it's a Pet Rock, an original Pet Rock. Now,
oh my God!
Who has one of these from the '70s? Come on.
People who were too lazy to go outside and just pick one up.
Hey, that was a swap meet find, man.
Nice. Very, very stylish, but I think getting back to what I was talking about, I think it's never going to be the same getting a collection of games and playing them on a PSP as it is like plugging something into your NES or your old Atari.
Yeah.
And
it's all about the controller, also the way the controller feels in your hands.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like
even the timing of it is sometimes different on these things because a lot of these classic collections now they're emulating. Some of them are even just flat using MAME or whatever, and so you get this latency problem, and you get the timing, and you can't play it with the same precision. And that's something else. And maybe I'm in the minority here. A lot of the games in some of those classic collections, I notice a lot of little things they get wrong, and it bugs me. It bugs me. Yeah, it's like I'm just gonna stick with my original copy of it because with all this modern technology, and they can't get Rampage right. I mean,
Well, even Mario Brothers 3, because I knew that game like the back of my freaking hand. even me jumping, I knew exactly. I could almost play it blindfolded, and the jumps would be a little bit off. And I'm like, what? I'm doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, by that much.
There's something just that fraction of a second that makes it different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've been playing the DuckTales Remastered HD version lately, and I would have rather they just put out an emulated collection of the two DuckTales games in a lot of ways. Like, it looks cool and all that, but adding the voice acting and cinematics has actually just made it worse, because now I can't really skip over that stuff. I mean, I can, but part of me won't let myself. I've just been kind of trained to sit there through the dialogue.
Yeah.
But but it loses something in the translation, definitely, and it's something you can't really explain to somebody if they've only played the newer version. You can't be like, but you're not really playing it because
It's like you can't explain to somebody. It's the same way you can't explain to somebody what it was like to watch one of the original Star Wars movies in the theater before HD, not on an HD projection, and not a special edition, and not with all the things we have in movie theaters today, which are cool. But what it was like to experience that then, the way we had it then, you can't explain it to somebody that never saw it.
Yeah,
they're not going to get it.
Yeah,
it's what it is.
Especially if they never come out with another Battletoads, like kids. It's like
that's my favorite prank call when I was working at GameStop.
Oh really?
What are you guys getting Battletoads doing?
Really? Do people still do that?
Oh yeah, it's like an ongoing thing, and we usually just prank them right back.
Well, see, if they actually came out with Battletoads, then it would shut up all the GameStop trolls, right?
It would. Be like, actually, it's coming out January 5th.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, new Battletoads. It's about time. And do you think, we talked a little bit about Kickstarters earlier, and the retro Kickstarters, the ones that are doing good, and the ones that you thought would do well but then didn't do well. Is there any game that you would really, really like to see come back on Kickstarter anytime soon?
Besides Boogerman?
Besides Boogerman.
The Lost Vikings, please.
Lost Vikings, good choice.
I love that.
Good.
Great little puzzle, yeah.
Let's see. It's a tough one.
Yeah,
I'd have to say something like Sinistar or something like that. That I don't really got its due that much back in the day, because the industry was starting to go down and this game was so damn hard in the first place. Something like that. Maybe make something a version of Sinistar that's true to the original play mechanics, but maybe uses some new visuals, doesn't overdo it. Maybe something like Pac-Man Championship Edition does, just enough to make it kind of fresh and bright, something like that. I think that there's a tremendous catalog of games that came out just before, just after, or during the mid-'80s crash period that were damn good games, but nobody ever saw them, so they don't know. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to see some of those get their shot with an audience now.
Nice. All right, Bob, Mike, you guys got anything?
Oh yeah, well, I'd like to actually see all the LucasArts games that haven't been re-released. I'd like to see them released in some way. That will never happen because Disney owns them now and they don't care. Mm-hmm. But you can't play Day of the Tentacle now. You can't play Maniac Mansion now. You can't play Curse of Monkey Island now, or Grim Fandango. So any of those being re-released would be amazing. If someone could buy those games from Disney, or maybe if someone in Disney could investigate how they could be released, that'd be amazing.
Or what about
I actually saw Curse of Monkey Island through Facebook at I think it was either PAX or E3 about a year ago, but it was the full game streaming through there, so that might be around.
Oh wow!
I'll have to look for that for you.
Yeah, a lot of people have done the spiritual successor thing as well. Just changing the name, but with an on the week, like Mighty Number 9. Mighty Number 9 is probably the biggest example of that, where you're just like, this is Mega Man, but it's not Mega Man, right? Even though
Mega Man.
So.
Two of my kind of favorite franchises, on the Sega Master System. One of my favorite games on there was Wonder Boy Monsterland.
Monsterland was the best.
Love that, and that's my favorite one. So I mean, certainly something along the lines of a reboot of Wonder Boy. I mean, it was a pretty large franchise. Mm-hmm. And same with Bonk's Adventure. That was another one that they were going to try to bring back. I remember at E3 a couple of years ago.
Hudson showed that off.
About it, but it just disappeared.
I played it. I played that game, and I was so pumped because it was just Bonk's Adventure. They didn't screw it up.
Yeah.
I remember you and I were talking about that when we outside the parking lot with Bill.
Yeah, God, it killed me. It broke my heart.
What year this was?
This was like 2 or 3 years ago. 4 maybe at the top.
There was a GameCube remake, but it didn't come to America. This was like 2003 or so.
Yeah, no, this was E3 I would say 2 years ago.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So much more recent.
Yeah, it was very recent. They even had it. I mean, the buses, were covered in Bonk's Adventure. The street buses even.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was making a comeback, and then it just disappeared.
Well, Hudson went under, and I don't know if they ever.
Somebody's got to own that.
Yeah, somebody had to have picked it up. If they don't, I'm getting all my pennies out of the jar, going down to the bank, rolling them up, and seeing if I got enough to buy me Bonk's Adventure as a franchise. Produce it myself. I'll take it to Kickstarter, and then you guys can have me on your podcast. There we go. Well, guys, it's 2:00, so we've been chatting here for about an hour. I'd be more than happy to keep going with you guys if you want, but I imagine that since most of us are freelancers, we all have busy schedules of writing we have to get done for everybody.
I put my podcast up now.
All right, so Bob, what is your podcast?
Oh yeah, it's Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast. Every week we have a different topic, and this week's topic is going to be Friday the 13th and Jaws for the NES. It was by a fan, so it's sort of our Halloween episode. So that'll be up in a few hours. But if you go to retronauts.com, you can check out our entire back catalog. We've been doing the episodes since July. I think this next one's our 17th in a row. So there's a lot to listen to if you haven't already. But yeah, thanks everybody for the opportunity, and I'll see you all later.
All right, and really, really quick,
Thanks,
Mike.
Bob.
All right, and Mike, where can we check out Retro Magazine?
I think the easiest way to find it is if just go to Google and just do a search for Retro Magazine Kickstarter. We'll just come up right at the top. Or, of course, you can do a search for Retro Magazine through the Kickstarter page itself. And definitely check out the auction site as well, gamegavel.com. And I'll plug my podcast, which is retrogamingroundup.com. We're going on, I think, 5.5 years. We do a 6 to 8 hour monthly show. And there's always some great interviews in there with some of the gaming pioneers and a lot of history. So you guys can check that out as well.
Excellent. All right. And Patrick Scott Patterson, where can we check your stuff out?
Well, my website, which is named patrickscottpatterson.com. That's the central hub of pretty much everything I do and all the content I produce and anything else I feel like sharing with the world. And also, you follow me on Twitter at OriginalPSP, and I try to be pretty interactive with people on there as best I can. So, don't be shy. Come chat with me. Go to my website, check out some videos, check out some media appearances, and some of the people of gaming culture I've been featuring lately.
Excellent. And Brandon, what's going on with you, homeboy? Are you just working on retro?
Working on this, man, trying to get this thing going so that gamers out there that have already backed us have a magazine to read here in a couple months. So that's really where my focus is right now. But you can also check out the website at readretro.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at readretro. So by all means, folks, get out there and check those out. Oh, and we're also on Facebook, same thing, facebook.com/readretro. So feel free to check those out. And if you have any questions about the magazine or want to work with me to get together a coordinated strike at Mike's house so we can get those cabinets out of there, just let me know. All
right. And Christina, you're here on We Can Geek a Bunch, hanging out with me and things like that. But you can also go to 16bitsirens.com and check out Christina's work there.
And we also have a Facebook page.
What's the Facebook page?
And 16-bit Sirens.
Would have never guessed.
What about you, Blakey Pooh? What about Cartoon Violence?
Oh my God, our new album is probably coming out in February. It's all done. We're just mastering it and we got the artwork already. The CD looks fantastic. If you're just talking from a visual perspective, I can't really speak towards the music. That's more subjective. But yeah, we're kicking ass, getting ready to make some music videos too. So. You can look for more of that. Of course, I'm at weekengeek.tv all the time, posting blog stuff and doing my thing. And that's really about it. So, guys, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for coming on. Please go check out readretro.com. Read Retro on Facebook, and fund the Kickstarter. I've left links for everybody in the chat room. When this is up on YouTube, there will be links in the little section of info as well. So, Mike, Brandon, Patrick, Scott, Patterson, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you to Bob Mackey for coming on as well. And Christina, thank you for being so lovely as always. Guys, we'll be back. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'm going to be playing some Batman Arkham Origins for you all to enjoy. I'll probably be doing silly voices as I play because I do a really good Batman and an even better Bane. So
You do a really good Bane.
yes, soon the world shall see my game-playing skills. Alright, so if you want more of that, tune in tomorrow, and we'll see you then. And then take care, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.